Last month, we launched our manifesto for Richmond, which sets out our vision for the future of the town. Richmond seems to have suffered more than most places in our borough over the past 2 or 3 years. Why is that? What's wrong with Richmond, and what can be done to make it better? We hope to hear some answers this evening. To discuss Richmond's revival, we have a distinguished panel representing local business and politics. Ann Chapman-Daniel, Chair of Richmond Business Improvement District. Welcome. Pamela Fleming, Councillor for South Richmond. Sarah Olney, MP for Richmond Park. And Gareth Roberts, Leader of Richmond Council. The discussion will be moderated by our patron, Anita Anand. We're very grateful to her for being with us today, especially during the busy week she has for broadcasting work. She came down just today from Newcastle.
Why
So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome all.
Thank you very much. Though I came from Newcastle, I am not of Newcastle. I am also a Richmondite like yourself, and I have been here for 15 years, so this is a place I love, as we all do, because it's special. It is beautiful, it is historic, it has there's a magic to Richmond. But like everywhere else in Britain, it has been a tough old time over this pandemic. And it looks as though we are in for a tough old time for a while yet. I just saw the Gdp Figure Report as I came out, and it makes for some pretty sobering reading. So this is a macro picture, but it's worth knowing. On a quarterly basis, the UK economy is still 2.1% below its pre-crisis level. And that contrasts with France, that is 0.1% below its pre-pandemic level, and the US economy, which is already larger. So, you know, there are big problems. There are also smaller problems, which you can feel when you walk through the high street, and like a smile with teeth missing in shops which still haven't been filled. And perennial problems that we face here. As people in Richmond who walk down the river, often complaints about litter and other things. And I know that you're going to have a lot of questions for this very high-powered panel that we have for you today. So what I'm going to ask, I think the way that we're going to structure is that I'm going to ask everybody to make a few comments, maybe a 1-minute statement that will tell you who they are and what's on their mind at the moment, and then I'll immediately open it up to questions. So let us start with you, Anne, from BID. Over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
No.
Is the microphone? Oh yes, that's probably better. You can hear me now. Yeah, I'll just hold it. Well, good evening everybody. I'm Ann Chapman-Daniel and I'm currently the chair of Richmond BID, which is, we give it the brand name Be Richmond. And BID is the Business Improvement District. It's not my day job. I own a company in Richmond myself. But the BID draws directors from the local businesses, and the Business Improvement District is made up of 350 businesses in Richmond, very tightly connected with the town centre. So basically the town centre, the high street, the green area, and we're about 40% offices based, like my company, and about 30% retail, 30% hospitality. So we're kind of a varied group, as you can imagine. So we all have very, very different business needs. So we group ourselves together around the sort of themes of living in Richmond, working in Richmond, and exploring Richmond, and trying to improve the town in all of those different 3 areas. Now, obviously, the money that we have is paid by local businesses. It's about 1.5% on top of our business rates, and that goes into a pot. And then we have to set a strategy for the staff that we employ and the outside consultants that we employ to help us come up with plans to spend the money in the best way to support the local business community. But while we're doing that, we've also got a very strong eye on the town itself, because what many of our members are office-based, 40% of us. So we are not looking at really sort of particularly at things going on in the high street. What we're thinking about is that we want high quality staff. We want a lovely area that our staff might want to live in or near. We want to make it very easy for our staff to get to the office. We want them to enjoy working in Richmond so that they will take a job in Richmond rather than feeling they need to go to central London to further their careers. So there are a lot of different kinds of dynamics going on within the Be Richmond bid. And what we're working on now for our next 5-year term, if we get one, because we have to go to ballot in January, and that means that the businesses have to vote to pay extra rates in order for the bid to continue, which at the moment you can imagine post-COVID is a big ask. So we're hoping to get another bid term, and when we do, we're going to be working on our plan that we call Future Vision for Richmond. And that is maybe what we can talk about a little bit later on. And there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anne. It's very comprehensive. Let's go to Pamela next.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Is it? Okay. Thank you. Well, I've been Councillor for South Richmond for quite some years now, and so I've heard and I get a lot of people contacting me about their concern over the centre of Richmond. I think it's true to say that businesses in the smaller trades, and that does of course include trades like Friar Style and Sheen Road, but those businesses have tended to be more agile to adapting to attracting a more local trade. Also their rents and rates are lower, and in general they tend to have landlords that are perhaps more flexible and not so remote. The centre of Richmond depends greatly on its visitors and of course on its employees. From that point of view, I think it's really important, even though I think hybrid working is going to continue, but we do need to have a stock of energy efficient and high quality office space to attract new businesses. I mean, I work very closely with the bid, and that investment is going to be absolutely crucial. But I think also, I mean, Richmond, as Anita was saying, I mean, it's quite unique with its both cultural and natural assets. And I hope that one of the things that perhaps we can explore tonight is just looking at how we can attract more visitors and indeed employees and investment to Richmond. All boroughs are going to be competing for this, and we really need to get ahead of the game.
Thank you very much. Now we'll turn to our local MP, or I should say, when Barry was saying, "What is wrong with Richmond?" I saw you visibly flinch. So let's go over to Sarah Olney.
Well, I did flinch, and I'm sorry, Barry, but I think there's a slightly negative framing, if you don't mind me saying. I think in some ways the pandemic has really revealed that, some of the best of Richmond, and I think two things that I would really pick up are firstly the strength of our voluntary sector, and obviously the work that Anne and the Be Richmond team are doing is fantastic. They had this great scheme, I think it was last November, to encourage people back into Richmond Town Centre and do safe spaces, and really wanted to encourage people back, and I thought that was brilliant. But as well as that, we've obviously had some of the organisations that support homeless, for example, the Vineyard do amazing work, and I know they're supported by lots of people in the local community. And we've had all sorts of initiatives right across the constituency, but certainly here in Richmond, just reaching out, forming relationships and just making sure that everybody was supported throughout the pandemic. And I think that was so important. It was one of the really standout things about Richmond. But one of the other things, of course, that I think we all developed a new appreciation of was our green spaces. Obviously the park, but also Richmond Green and the Riverside, Kew Gardens. And I think we all developed a new appreciation of how fortunate we are to live in a space with so much, so much of the natural environment to enjoy. So that's why I think, because I feel like it's a slightly negative framing. But that's not to say that there aren't challenges that we are facing as we come out of the pandemic. Some of them related to the pandemic, some of them related to other issues that are going on alongside. I think if I could pick out two things, and it's probably related a bit to what both Anne and Pam were saying. I think the first thing is the strength of our town centre as a retail centre. We all know we've got some voids, and I think when I've been speaking to local businesses, I know that, for example, high rent is a real challenge. And I actually introduced a piece of backbench legislation in the Commons a few months ago to ban upward-only rent reviews, because this is something that local businesses have said to me, that when they're signing new leases, rent gets reviewed, it can only ever go up. And yet what we're seeing is quite volatile market conditions at the moment. So, there ought to be the possibility that a rent could be reviewed downwards, and then that would obviously help if that was, part of the, if what retailers are finding is that there's less money coming in through the till, that their rent ought to reflect that. There's a piece of government legislation, I think it's coming next week or the week after, about rent arrears, and I've been having quite a lot of correspondence with the owner of one of the local restaurants, for example, about how much rent he owed during the pandemic, that his landlord was insisting on being paid despite the fact that he couldn't trade. So I'm glad to see that the government are bringing in legislation now to help precisely people like that. But I'm going to be bringing up the only rent review when we debate that in Parliament. And the other thing I think is really, really important is our transport network. And again, I think Pam touched on this, bringing people into the town centre. I had a big debate recently about the South Western Railway's plans to run a reduced timetable. And we're pushing back very, very firmly against that, because I think it's so important that we maintain strong transport links across all of London. But it's really important for Richmond, and I want to make sure that TfL continue the bus services that we've come to rely on. We want to make sure that we maintain those links to central London, and also, of course, I think that's the great strength of Richmond, not just that we can get from here to central London, but people can get from all parts of, sort of Surrey and Berkshire to us, and that that continues to bring people in. And the strength of our cultural offer, as Pam was saying, is so strong as well. But it does rely on people being able to travel easily to Richmond, and that's something I should keep campaigning very hard for.
Okay, and the final 1 minute to Gareth Roberts.
Thank you. The one thing which I think we can all agree on is that as far as the pandemic, which we've just lived through for the last 18 months, is concerned, necessity has been the mother of invention. And we have the opportunity now, which has been presented to us by force majeure, to reconsider how we look at Richmond, to consider how Richmond works. And the council will be playing a very key role in this, not just in driving change, but in facilitating change at the same time. So we'll be wanting to work with Be Richmond, we'll be wanting to work with residents, we'll be wanting to work with community societies, such as the Richmond Society, in order to find out how things can be done differently. Because the one thing which is not going to happen, I don't think is at all possible for it to happen, is to go back to business as usual, is to go back to, let me see, I'm trying to remember the dates now, when it would have been, so December 2019, when we were all gathered in George Street, cheering on the various Christmas light switch-ons, and then suddenly everything got shut down. We need to be looking, I think, far more at an experience of coming into Richmond. What does it feel like to be coming into Richmond Town Centre? Because we all know that the availability of online shopping is there, and that deserves that particular offer. But we need to find out what Richmond can offer, which is going to be that little bit extra. And it already does offer a great deal of extra or added value, as we like to talk about in council circles. But we need to find out whether we can squeeze a bit more out of it. And we are going to see change. We're already seeing things such as the change which is happening at House of Fraser, and I'm sure we'll be coming on to that at some point this evening. We're already seeing a far more of a move over towards a food market, a food and beverage market, as opposed to a sort of strict retail market. And the idea, we've seen shops like Gap go, because they're just going on solely online. Where I'm going to buy my clothes from, the food I simply don't know. But we do need to be courageous. This is the thing which I want to get over this evening. We have to look at things differently. And if that means being prepared to look at how people get around Richmond, whether it means that we need to be looking at whether the prevalence of the individual car in the centre of Richmond is the way forward. I think that we should be able to look at these things and look at them honestly and openly and without fear. And if we find that there is still a need for these things, well then that's how it goes. But we need to be looking, I think, at how things are done elsewhere to see which learnings we can get. some people will come to me this evening after when we're having drinks and say pedestrianise the whole lot. Is that the right way forward? But what happens to the buses? What happens to the cars? What happens to the individual traders? What happens to the deliveries? All of these things are things we need to look at. What I hope we're going to get out of this evening is a willingness to at least look, rather than immediately say no.
Well, I mean, I think the people of Richmond are famously open-minded. And what is interesting to me, actually, and we're going to open it up straight away to the audience, but from all of you, the main thrust has been how to attract people into Richmond. And one thing that perhaps will come from the audience, I'm guessing, is what it is like to live in Richmond. And what you think about, attracting more people into Richmond, because that was quite a contentious affair over the hot summer months, I think most of us remember. Anyway, let me throw this open to you in the audience. Who is going to be brave enough? This is not a time to be shy. If you would like to ask a question, please put your hand in the air. There we are, gentleman over there, thank you very much. Do we have mic holders, or are we just asking people? We do. So if you just bear with us. Thank you. Could you put your hand up again? There's a gentleman in the grey pullover.
Good evening, thank you, and thanks very much for the Richmond Society. It's a great privilege to be here together. I'd just like to say, Richard Wolfe, local architect, business owner and resident. I think you're absolutely spot on. We have to embrace change, and we have to not be scared of change, because, as you say, looking backwards to go forward isn't always helpful. I do agree with you that transportation movement around this borough, especially carbon neutral transportation, is very important. And I would like, Gareth, if you could hopefully see your way clear to doing the second stage of the footbridge consultation between Ham and Twickenham, which is a very important way of connecting around the borough by foot and bicycle.
Okay, thank you. There's a very specific question to you, Gareth, and then I'm going to follow up with something for you, Sarah. So, the footbridge.
It's on the radar. The one thing which I was told the other day, and it takes a lot to take the wind out of my sails, but one of my officers said in order to do the feasibility study for the footbridge across the river, it's going to be £1 million. And just, I know, you're going to come in and say you'll do it for half the price.
Sorry, just as a point of information, the WSP report was completed. It's an excellent report. And the second stage of that report, I'm quite sure, will not be £1 million.
No,
that's a lot of consultants' time. I would stick 90 grand on the day.
It's something we want to look at. I mean, there are arguments on both sides which I see, but the ability to get people over the river, particularly in this COP26 format, the idea to look at a new way of travelling around a carbon neutral, carbon free, whichever you want to call it. If you come in by electric bike, it's not going to be carbon free because it has to be charged somehow. But a better way of getting around, which is less of a drain on the resource of the environment, is certainly something we are very keen to do.
Okay, and Sarah, you mentioned, that you're it sounds like sort of trying to stave off a reduction in services. How much time have you walked? When did they want to start cutting it? By how much?
Well, they've been doing, so South Western Railways have recently been doing a consultation with what they call their major stakeholders, i.e. not passengers, but other organisations, which they're due to announce very soon, sometime this month. But it's with the anticipation that they would want to be cutting services from December next year. They need to get their timetables in order quite a long way in advance for various reasons. And that's why they're consulting now. But myself and Manira Wilson, my friend and colleague from Twickenham, have been to Chris Heaton-Harris, who is the Minister for Rail. We've made it very clear that we think this is a bad idea, and I think he's very sympathetic to our arguments. So there's still a way for this to go. But I mean, basically, our position is that firstly, it's too soon to say. Nobody knows what the long-term impact of the pandemic is going to be. I think the genie is out of the bottle on home working, and I think lots of people, and speaking as much for myself as anyone, those of us with young families really see the advantage of being able to spend at least some of the week working from home. And I think that will be more and more of it will just be more of a phenomenon. And So yes, I think it might well be right that there will be fewer people travelling at peak times, but I don't think that necessarily means a reduction in travel overall. And people will be travelling more flexibly. They might travel in the morning, come home at lunchtime, vice versa. What we're definitely seeing is a lot more travelling at off-peak time. And I think that is something that's really important for the economy of London as a whole. It's about the restaurants, the theatres, the cinemas, the nightclubs, and that's what we want to see in Richmond as well. So it's really, really important that we maintain services so that people have got the choice, so that people, when they need to travel, can travel, and most importantly, that they're choosing the train, that the train is an attractive and viable option for people's travel needs.
Okay, but it's fair to say this is an ongoing discussion. Nothing is imminently going to be cut. Okay, lovely. Next question. Put your hand up. Otherwise, I'm going to ask a question about rents, and I'm very happy to do that because when you do walk around Richmond and you do go into some of the gappy bits of the Smile or places that are about to go under, the complaint has always been that the landlords are being just completely unreasonable. They have no idea of how much we as businesses have suffered, and sometimes we can't get a hold of them. How are you navigating that for your members and for those who are too small to be your members?
I don't know if it's on or not, just try and, otherwise this one is
Yes. Maybe that's on now? No, I think I've just got it, yeah. Well, I think I should make it clear that everybody individual businesses, and that everybody sorts out their own rent and their own rates, and I mean, that is certainly nothing that can be done centrally for anybody. So, for my company's point of view, we pay, I think very expensive rent per square foot, and then obviously also rates per square foot, and that's another issue that in Richmond the rates are also very expensive. And in addition, then if you're in an office situation, then you have management charges on top of the rent, and they are also very expensive. So, I mean, I'm actually also a local Richmond resident, and we set our business about 25 years ago, and we started in Mortlake. And when we moved the business from Mortlake to Richmond, we took about the same space actually. We just wanted to come to the centre of Richmond, and our costs more than doubled. They basically tripled, and today they've gone up even more because we've taken even more space, and we pay an absolute, I think, fortune. And that is an office and our company is very profitable. But for high street businesses who are, really stuck with their pricing and stuck with the salaries of their staff and so on, and it's definitely very, very difficult. We know that there are some businesses in Richmond that actually are not opening up their restaurants if they had a restaurant above a cafe or a delicatessen, because they realise that actually they make absolutely no more profit through doing so because of the extra cost of the staffing that they're going to have. So it's been really difficult for businesses for the last 5 years, because Brexit was also an issue, which is obviously also the issue in the GDP that you were talking about earlier on, and that affects all companies. When I trade a lot with the EU anyway, but we are actually not affected. We're fine. It's online business, and we're fine. But for a lot of the shops where they're bringing in goods from the EU, then their costs are going up as well. So it's not just COVID, it's also being driven by Brexit, and it's a big challenge.
Well, I mean, it's fascinating to me, and I'm new to this, that you as a consortium cannot exert pressure or knows where to exert the pressure. Is there, Pamela, somewhere where pressure can be exerted to say to landlords, be reasonable about this? You're wrecking the high street if you're not reasonable.
I think the real trouble in somewhere like Richmond is that the properties are mainly owned by pension funds, local authorities, and that they are not receptive. And in fact, it's incredibly difficult to find out in many cases who the landlords actually are. I can remember when we wanted to put up CCTV cameras, it took something like 2.5 years to get the wayleaves to trace the landlords to actually do this. We had the same problem with Christmas lights when we wanted to. So this is the thing. It's getting hold of the landlords, and they're not receptive. And this is the point I was making about the smaller areas where you've often got you know, individual landlords or those who are actually understand about the importance of keeping that particular parade or those particular shops viable, and they'll be more flexible. But no, I mean, we've tried for many, many years, and I mean, it does, I think, the only thing is government legislation.
If only we had somebody who knew central government and how it worked. Is there any appetite to do something centrally about this?
So, I mean, I think that there's a whole range of different issues, and I've been thinking about this a lot because, as I say, it keeps coming up in central Richmond in particular, but right across the constituency, and it's something I feel really passionate about because I really do want to, you know, bring down the barriers to entry for new retailers, particularly for Richmond. So what Pam was just saying there about absentee landlords, if you like, it is a real issue. And as I say, there's a particular restaurant in central Richmond that I've been trying to act on behalf of during the pandemic, and their landlord is based in Jersey, which just goes to show. And as soon as I saw the address, my heart sank, and I thought, well, you know, I know what I'm dealing with. And it is right, it's about the pension funds, but what you find is that they're all highly geared, and the terms of the loans that they're taking out of the investment banks are all based on maintaining a minimum rent, and that's what they're focused on. And what we found is that the interests of the landlord gradually departed, as it were, from the interests of the tenant. So you can't any longer have this sort of negotiation about make it easier for me to trade and I can make more money and then that works for you. So it's become really, really complicated.
But I mean, I think we all feel and understand the problem, but what I'm not sensing is that there is any solution that is clear.
So as I said, there is some legislation coming next week or the week after about making it easier for those who built up arrears during the pandemic, that they can sort of ring-fence those arrears, and that different conditions will apply that if the landlords want to pursue them. So that's what the government are doing, which I think is very positive, and I'll be supporting that. But it's I'm sorry, it's really complicated, and there is something quite unique about the way that we manage landlord-tenant relationships in the UK. The way they do it on the continent, you're much more likely to have what they call a turnover-related rent. So you pay a certain amount, and then on top of that, you pay whatever an amount that's related to how much turnover you've managed to achieve. Now we're starting to see that in some new developments and some retailers where they've got a common landlord. So shopping malls, for example, are more likely to have this sort of thing. So we're starting to see that coming in this country. But at the moment, that's how much you pay, and it's not related at all to how well the business might be performing.
Okay, I mean, it's not a cheering picture, but then, let me give you some feedback from the Richmond Society, which, the observation has been made and also stated in the manifesto of the Richmond Society, which is when you walk around local areas, Teddington being one, St Margaret's being another, they seem to be doing better. They are not so gappy. It is not so sad to be walking around and seeing places that have been open and singular and unique, and they are still there. So to return to Barry's comment, what is wrong with Richmond? Gareth?
It is the expense of Richmond, and that is why.
Well, I'll come back to you.
No, I'm sitting there quietly, just enjoying it. There's nothing, first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing wrong with Richmond at all. Sorry, but there are challenges, and the challenges are, as have been outlined, is high rent, it's high rates, which are nothing to do with me, ladies and gentlemen. I do not set business rates. We are merely the lads in the bowler house that go around to collect on behalf of government. Just on the business rates, if I may, just very quickly, it's very easy to knock government, and to knock this particular government. It is at the moment, it's really easy, but they did an absolute blinder, in my view, in the business grant support, the rates relief, the business rates support package, which were given to businesses which really did struggle throughout the pandemic. And I would be the first to take my hat off to them, because there were businesses which are still open today, because they got the financial support from central government, admirably distributed by Richmond Council, I should say, but they were there, and we should recognise that. But for me, one of the problems, and I mentioned this in the introduction, is the experiential feel of when you come to Richmond. Particularly, we've got narrow pavements, we've got buses which whistle past with their wing mirrors, which, when you're a tall lad like me, you've got to really dodge a bit to make sure that you're not going to get whacked on the back of the head as this bus comes in. And it just feels slightly hostile as a shopping experience. When you go to places like Kingston, you can walk around with relative ease, but apart from when, and I'll get the cycling, people are going to give me a hard time about this, but apart from cyclists nipping back and forth, and people on e-scooters, it just doesn't have that easiness that you feel in other shopping areas. And I hope that we might at some point, not in a not too distant future, start to get some of that easy feel.
It sounds very much like you are softening yourself for a great pedestrianisation of Richmond. And no, and I'm giving the option, I'm giving you the magic wand. You create the Richmond of your dreams. What would it look like? Where can we drive and where would we be walking?
Well, where can we drive? I think this is purely my personal opinion before I start getting the letters and the leaflets coming out of the council wants to do this. Purely my personal opinion is that we had a major relief road built at the side of Richmond called the A316 with direct access onto the car park. So if people want to come shopping in Kingston, drive at the 316 and come toward the car park there, rather than feeling the need to drive into the town centre first and foremost. Because there are areas in Richmond which have got appallingly poor air quality. And this is a result of the number of private vehicles and diesel buses and diesel taxis all going through, and it just makes it all feel terrible. If I was waving a magic wand, I would probably be looking about whether I'm trying to think of the name of the road now, it's terrible, outside Marks & Spencer's and George Street, that's the one, thank you. Whether that could be buses only is something I think that we should be looking at, electric buses and things like that. We need to be bold on these things, because unless it feels pleasant to go to a place, and there are places just up the road which do feel pleasant, then people will choose the place where it is pleasant. I mean, all of my kids are now sort of age 12 plus, 12 to 17. I would let them roam free in Church Street and Twickenham when they were younger, if that was pedestrianised, they can just walk around. But I would be grabbing them, even the 16-year-old, I'd probably grab them by the hand sometimes in George Street, because it doesn't feel like it's a safe environment. We need to find a safe environment which is going to allow businesses to flourish, and also to draw people in, because when people feel comfortable shopping, they will travel to shop in a nice, sustainable way.
Okay, I mean, it's at the risk of turning this into Hogwarts, I'm just going to hand out magic wands right now before we move on from this subject. What is your dream Richmond here in the audience? So the gentleman, is there still a mic holding? If you could come round to this side, because we've got two. We've got the gentleman there, if the lights are low, a brown jumper. I hope I'm not sartorially offending you. And then there was somebody in front. Yes, the lady in the orange after that. So if we go to the gentleman first, I saw you first, and then we'll come to the front.
I appreciate that Richmond Town and Richmond Borough are not the same things, but it would be great if we lived in a royal borough. It would be great if we worked in a royal borough. It would be great for visitors to visit a royal borough, and we've got a rich royal history. Could the council consider applying to be the royal borough for the Jubilee next year?
Who would like to speak?
It's not something one applies for. You don't get your 5 Nescafe lids and send them in with a self-assessment. I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, but when the Queen came to Richmond, sorry, I'm doing a lot of talking now, so I'll shut up. When the Queen came to Richmond Park for the Golden Jubilee, Diamond Jubilee, and I saw Nick True there, and who previously leader of the council, and he had a face like a wet weekend in Grimsby, and I said to him, what's wrong, Nick? What's wrong? And he said, Greenwich is what's wrong. We were told that there'd be no royal boroughs handed out this year. We were told that there'd be none in this Jubilee year, and Greenwich have got it, and he was absolutely livid. And I felt his pain to us, because I agree with you. I think that we should be a royal borough. I think we got half, what it feels like half dozen royal parks. We've got the Royal Botanic Garden, we've got the Royal Ballet School, we've got the Royal, several royal palaces, huge royal connections. And yet somehow Richmond is overlooked. So I think the most that can be said is that emissaries are being dispatched to discuss the matter, but we couldn't really go and sound it. But we really, it's not something you apply for. You just wait for the grace of the sovereign to bestow.
Yes,
One of
the-
your illustrious predecessors said we do apply for it and we wouldn't.
Really? Come and talk to me after this. Tell me more.
the lady at the front. And just before, I mean, is there anybody on this side? Because if I look to one side, I don't want to neglect you. Okay, we'll stay with you.
And continuing as Richmond Society the last 3 years. I do agree with you, Councillor, about the buses and the general feel in George Street being not very relaxing, should we say, to walk along around the shops, and I think that is an issue would be good to address. I'm sorry.
I think if you point it towards you, so if you point the
Better?
round bit, that
How's
way,
that?
little like a pop star,
Better?
much
Okay.
better.
I don't have much experience as a pop star, but go on. So, just two things I wanted to say. One is, I think, regarding George Street and the surrounding areas, we could do a lot to tidy up. We have a big problem, I can see, with homeless people and beggars just sort of hovering around the streets there. It isn't very great. It does seem to be worse in other places. I know it's everywhere, but it seems to be a particular problem. And I notice it pretty much every time in Richmond, and I think we could do more. And the other thing is, you might think that you go then down to the riverside for a nice quiet walk. I was with a friend of mine today, recently moved out of Richmond, sadly, and she said, the problem with Richmond is, the riverside used to be so lovely to walk on, but actually now it's really quite tatty. The grass isn't cut properly, she was never from the lock. And she said generally a lot of rubbish around, and it's really not that nice anymore. It's gone downhill. So that's what I want to say. I think we can do some quick wins with tidying.
Gareth, forgive me, I'm going to start on this side.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we're going to start on this side. But is that, first of all, the impression from your members as well, that it's become a bit tatty, a little sad, and needs a spruce up at the very least?
Well, I think what I would say is that a lot of the sprucing up that has taken place recently, it's actually been done by Be Richmond bid, because we have done litter picking along the Thames. In fact, some of the team of my staff were down there just yesterday with the Thames draw-off, which was organised by the bid, and we had whole teams of staff going out and in their wellies and actually picking up rubbish from the riverside. We also organised the paddleboard event, which picked up plastic from the river. I mean, we had 100 paddleboarders out there. We couldn't have too many because of COVID, but we had a waiting list of another 100. And in fact, Gareth was out there as well on the paddleboard, picking up plastic as they went down the river, and then hundreds of people on either side of the towpath picking up rubbish as they went along, and they got several tons of litter in one day. So we also offer regular litter picks. In fact, we had, together with the council, Pamela, we had litter picks so that anybody could go out and do literally a 2-minute litter pick. And so the bid did a lot of publicity to try and promote this. And we did it again recently as well. So, there are efforts. I'm sure that if there was more money around, then more litter picking could take place. But at least if we could have the litter picks as we did before, so that anybody could walk along and just think, I'll just pick up a little bit of litter. And we encouraged a lot of the schools to tell their children, when you're out with your parents, grab up litter pick and get some litter. So, we certainly do what we can. And talking about the riverside, by the way, and also the Christmas lights, it was 2 years ago, just to let you know that on the 2nd of December, the Richmond Bid has organised the Christmas lights again with the switch-on event, and it is actually going to take place, I hardly dare tell you, on the riverside, on a terrace, but there will be people out the next day cleaning up the litter. But it should be really, really nice, so just outside the new Brindisa restaurant that's opened up. And I just wanted to also go back to all these comments about Richmond, because, all of the graphic boards for Richmond Theatre and Strawberry Hill and Marble Hill House and the history and the heritage of Richmond, Richmond Museum as well, that have been placed on these vinyl panels to try and make the empty, gappy shops look less offensive. That was also organised by the bid. So the businesses of Richmond have paid for all of those vinyl panels to go up in order to try and make Richmond look better. It would have looked far worse if we hadn't put them up. And in fact, we had quite a lot of empty retail space, but I don't know if you've noticed, but it is actually filling up again. And we've got some very interesting new companies who are now moving into Richmond, like Little Dobbins and several kind of organic stores, grocery stores and so on, and some great restaurants. I don't know if Scott's is coming from Mayfair. They have chosen as their first place to go outside of Mayfair. They have chosen to come to Richmond, and they're going to go on the riverside there as well. Brindisa, fantastic Spanish-owned tapas bar, they're already there. They've opened up already, and they're dog-friendly, children-friendly, great. Great for me because I've got a dog. And there are, a whole range of restaurants, like Megan's is coming in, the Fat Badger's coming in from Notting Hill. We've got some fantastic restaurateurs. That is going to bring more retail into Richmond, because it's like these people are saying that, in spite of all the problems and in spite of everything that, Richmond has suffered, more than Sheen, more than Teddington, of course, because the rents are so much more expensive. If your business is just about managing as it is, then COVID comes along and that's it. You just have to go bankrupt, you have to go out of business. But that is hopefully behind us, and now we can look forward to a much, much better period in the next couple of years of new businesses, new types of businesses coming in, and there are some very entrepreneurial people out there, and we have very entrepreneurial people in Richmond. So I have great optimism for the future, and with the future vision plans, which ties into the way that the areas are looking at the moment, we have already started work together with the council on some projects that we think that we can bring to fruition in the next 5 years. The bid has selected about 13 that we want to move forward, and all of them are based on making Richmond look better for the residents, as well as the companies. I mean, a lot of us are local. I've lived in Richmond for 30 years, so I'm very, very local. Most of my staff are local, and most of the other directors on the big board are local. So it's very much we all want to move the town in the right direction for everybody, and that probably does mean more green, more opportunities for young people to stay employed in Richmond, so they don't all feel the need to get up on trains and go into town. We want more technology-oriented businesses, clean tech.
Thank you. And Pamela, you want to go?
Yes, I think the bid, Richmond has benefited enormously from having a business improvement district. It's just a shame that sort of during the pandemic you weren't able to continue with some of the work and projects that we'd now actually be seeing the benefit of. But there are, I'm optimistic about Richmond as well. We are seeing some of those empty shops being filled. And the new restaurants, they will bring in the sort of nighttime economy, which does of course have its own issues that perhaps I know some people have concern about. But I just want to go back to the actual specific questions that were asked. And one was about the homeless people on the street and the begging, I think. Now, as far as homeless concerned, during COVID, there were grants provided, and people, fortunately, the people who are unfortunate enough not to have a home were provided with accommodation. The begging is a different issue. It's organised. You'll see them in Richmond one day, Kingston another, North London another day. But the real problem of all this is that we have fantastic Safer Neighbourhood team, but unfortunately we don't have a dedicated town centre police team. And it's very difficult for our Safer Neighbourhood team to cope with the pressures of the town centre as well. You need the police presence on the streets every day to keep the begging away, and actually to make people feel safe as well. So, we have been, both Peter and I, and indeed our fellow ward councillor as well, Bill Newton-Dunn, we have been pressing for the last 3-4 years for a dedicated town centre team. I do sense that we're knocking at an open door, but of course the trouble is that we're part of a wider borough command unit, and Kingston Wandsworth tend to get the first preference because the crime rate is much higher. Richmond's crime rate is very low. I just sort of would like to pick up a little bit on what Gareth was saying about Richmond and George Street. I think it's true that it would be improved a lot if we didn't have as much traffic going through it. The real problem we have is where that traffic actually goes. The 316, absolutely right for through traffic, but if it's people who want to access, shall we say, Sheen or the areas, you've got those wretched level crossings, which mean you're putting pressure on residential roads, and in fact roads where you've got a lot of schools as well. So it's not an easy problem to solve. But we do have those wonderful alleyways, which are really the heart of Richmond, where we've got those independent businesses, and we want to make sure that those flourish as well. So yeah, I'm optimistic about Richmond. The bid has done, as I said, a lot. And it's not just litter picking, which in fact we as ward councillors as well, and we've got other people to join, and we were doing those on sort of once a month. But also the deep cleaning of the pavements, because much as the pavements look lovely when they're clean, they look absolutely awful when they've got all that chewing gum on them. And the bid have been absolutely great about doing those deep cleans as well. So, I don't think we should be getting too depressed about Richmond. It's a great place to live. The Orange Trees Theatre has opened up again. We've got Richmond Theatre opening. We've got all the new hospitality sector coming in. So I think if we could get that dedicated town centre police team as well, we'd be well on the way to, we'd have the sort of safe and attractive Richmond that everybody wants.
Thank you very much. Any other questions here? Gentleman right over there. Sorry, we're making you run today. I hope you've got your pedometer on. You're going to be doing sterling work tonight.
I'm David Masson. I've only lived in Richmond for a few years, so my experience is quite new. Yes, I think the pandemic has been tough, but I also see a changing demographic within Richmond. I think there's more young people around. I don't know if they live here or not, I have no idea. But there are more young people coming into Richmond, and that must be a good sign. I think sometimes we think, oh my God, this is kind of changing in a way that maybe some of us don't like so much, but actually for the future of the borough we need more young people. We need more young people to be present and alive and visible on the streets. I do support the idea that more pedestrianisation would be better. I think there's a lack of outdoor space for cafes and restaurants. I'm glad there's more restaurants coming, but actually many of them won't have outdoor spaces, I don't think, because there's not that much space to put outdoor seating anywhere in Richmond as I perceive it. And also talking about culture, although we have fantastic cultural organisations such as Richmond Theatre and the Orange Tree, there's a lack of events on the streets, and I support the idea of more outdoor events on the streets and in the beautiful spaces that Richmond actually has, like the Riverside, like the Green, other open spaces, because when you talk about experiencing Richmond, that's what visitors actually want. They don't want just another shop, and they don't even necessarily want another chain cafe necessarily. They want experiences that are on the streets, or the streets feel alive.
Well, thank you so much for your question, and also, together with Pamela and tandem, you've sort of opened a door onto a very interesting and I think difficult line that you have to walk here, because we have a mixed area. You've got businesses cheek by jowl with residences. Now, Pamela, you were saying, the nighttime economy is one which would be great for Richmond. However, I can nobody's really raising their hands or their voices here, but when that goes out into the wider world, you two are going to be on Zoom meetings in a heartbeat, aren't you? Dealing with, nighttime noise, moratoriums on opening times, tables and chairs being, 3 inches to the left or the right. It's tricky. So how are you going to navigate those two desires? Sarah, first of all.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to pick up what the gentleman was saying about young people. So the constituency of Richmond Park obviously incorporates Richmond Town Centre and all of Richmond to the east of the river, but it also has a lot of Kingston in it. I don't quite go as far as Kingston Town Centre, but my Kingston residents regard Kingston Town Centre as their town centre in that. And the difference I really see between the two, Kingston has a university, it has a large college, and it really does make a difference in terms of the number of young people there are in Kingston Town Centre Richmond, I would say, is more sedate and more elegant, but Kingston has definitely got, feels like quite a fresh vibe. It feels creative. It feels like it's focused or oriented towards young people's interests a lot more. The live music venues, for example, and the sort of range of shops there. So I see a real contrast between the two, and I certainly think it's to do with the presence of young people, the way young people want to be going out. But I think Anita is absolutely correct that you have, Kingston is a town centre, very much a centre, surrounded by a ring road, and then people live outside the town centre. So you don't have quite so much conflict, I think, probably is the best way to sum it up. I think what you were just saying there is absolutely right. I think it'd be wonderful to have some more sort of street events, some more events that you could come and visit and be in Richmond, as you say, and there's some great opportunities, I think, as you say, by the riverside and on the green. But there's no doubt that obviously the green itself is surrounded by residential properties. And so to have anything late at night there presents issues for local residents, as we've seen during the lockdown. But perhaps almost the solution is in the problem. Almost more organised events you have, the more events where you're encouraging people to come there for a certain reason, the less kind of informal gatherings, if I can describe it as that you would have. The more sort of tables and chairs you have out on the street and people being there for licensed reasons, the less hanging about you would have. So I would really support a bit more of perhaps I wouldn't go quite so far as to call it perhaps an evening economy more than a nighttime economy, the one that's based around dining more than late night drinking or music events or whatever. I think Richmond could really support that. I think it would be really welcomed. I think we'd have to be very careful where it went. I think we'd have to be in defined spaces at defined times. I do think we have to be very conscious of the impact on residents. But at the same time, I think making an actual positive kind of offer of the sorts of events we do want to see happening in central Richmond would possibly chase out, if you like, the ones that we don't want to see, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, Pam's right about the fact that Kingston gets the additional police because of the fact that they have the nighttime economy. So it's this sort of choice that you have. I mean, there's still time to turn House of Fraser into prison too, and you can have a full-on nightclub going on. I'm not sure it's very popular, but you will get the police. So it's on there. I think what we do get, what we have to remember first and foremost is that the idea of nighttime economy in actually here in Richmond is nothing new. I remember being a debauched student at St Mary's 30 years ago and going to, it used to be called Park Avenue, I think, but on Hill Rise was a nightclub up there. We used to call it
I don't know why you're looking at Pamela. That was weird.
That was always there with the glow sticks, like no one's business. But we used to call it Dark Avenue because it was really quite grim. But it was one of the closer nightclubs, but it was slightly smaller. It wasn't quite as threatening as the ones that used to get up in the I don't do threatening. I do more today. But we do need to start looking at what I find in my inbox every now and again is that when analysis is on planning is that whenever there was anything which seemed to go on beyond 10:30, the great cry was no. It doesn't matter what it was. And I mean there was one planning application which was up near the cinema once, and it was effectively going to be a very small members club. It was a cigar bar of all things before the indoor smoking mandate. But it was a cigar bar with effectively for rich bankers. A bit of after hours, very expensive, very members, and that was it. And the response, which I was getting, was no. This cannot happen.
Response from who? From residents?
From I mean, I'm not going to say next. So later, come and see me. But the response that we had was overwhelmingly this is not what we want to see in Richmond. But it would have filled up a vacant unit, and that's the thing. Hello. You've got your hand up.
Yeah.
Were you behind the cigar bar?
I think I don't want to characterise what I said as the nighttime economy. It's not. It's the family economy.
No.
We take that point, but Pamela very much was talking, and there is no doubt, economically speaking, a nighttime economy would add a great deal.
But so would a family economy.
I mean,
sure.
If more people are spending time with their families, not commuting, it's just they want to go out locally with their families. Young people don't necessarily want to detach themselves from their parents.
If you want a shining beacon about how family friendly Richmond is, which other towns do you know has got 3 separate ice cream bars? You've got 3. Go and count them, and I'll buy you a raspberry ripple later.
But 4 actually.
But what we see in other areas, and I think these are things which could be important to Richmond, is that I represent Hampton, and we have a large green in Hampton with a residential mix all around the outside, and once a year we have a free to attend open air cinema event, and all the families come down and it's lovely and everybody loves it. Is it slightly noisy for one evening? Yes it is, however that's the sort of trade that we have. You have an absolute, you can either do that here on the green, you can do it on the riverside, and it is these sorts of little bits, these extra things which will bring people in and make people feel comfortable, and including the residents, including the businesses, because the businesses get involved, they have their little stands all around, and they'll sell drinks and ice creams and popcorn and things like that. And we had in Twickenham fairly recently the High Tide Festival, which was put on by the Twickenham bid, and that had small band areas around the land. So it is these sorts of experiences that you rightly talk about, which I think could be embraced a bit more in Richmond, if I'm being
So do you think that we're a difficult lot here? That we are like the people who sat to the cigar bar?
Challenging.
No, right, okay.
Could I just say that there is the Mayfair, on
Yes.
the green.
Yeah.
And obviously it hasn't taken place.
And that's always very important.
And also the festival on the riverside, the music one.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, we
It's
do.
greatly successful. We've done it with, I don't presume again this year, but we've done it before. And that was another one that over sort of, a couple of days, no problems. People and families enjoyed it. And I'm in the bit of doing some entertainment in Whittaker Avenue at
Yes,
the
indeed.
moment. And it's those sorts of things. So, hugely important that we do that sort of thing in Richmond. Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
But if you bring in people at night time, they're not shopping. And the shops in Richmond are food and ice creams or drinks or coffee. We need to bring in more retail. A friend of mine said, where do I go for a pink sweater? I need a pink sweater tonight. There isn't one. Marks and Spencer's, sure, they do a very good brand of pink sweaters, but it's the smaller outlets for impulse buying, perhaps, that are missing.
I'm absolutely agog to this urgent need for pink sweaters. And I want to hear more about that later. But you're quite right. One of the things that we have in Twickenham is the pedestrianisation of Church Street. And that's very largely driven towards the food and beverage angle. But what you find is that when people pop in of an afternoon for a spot of lunch or a coffee and a cake with friends, then they'll pop into the gift stores, which are around. And I appreciate this is not happening at night, it's a daytime thing, and you point that out. But the more that you can offer as a range, the more that you can offer as that hook, then that's how you build up the specialist retail environment. Because people will come in for one thing and they'll stay for another. And but it is trying to square that circle for the evening. So whether a late night shopping evening is something that might be considered. We tried to do late night shopping in Hampton, and it was like pulling teeth with the traders, to be fair. And they hear me sort of rail against this on a regular basis. Is this, we want to get home, bake-offs on. And but they will religiously open their doors at 9 o'clock and then complain that between 9 and 11 they don't see somebody for minutes.
But is there the need for so many coffee shops?
Okay, let me send that back to bid, because I suppose you would say those are the people who are coming.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was going to say that people open cafes because they do their research and they think this is a really, really wonderful place that everybody wants to come to somewhere as green and lovely as Richmond. And I would certainly love to see more tables and chairs outside. I would also welcome the pedestrianisation of George Street. I mean, it's tricky because we've got the station there with all the buses right outside, but further up then there might be some possibilities. And I think I would love to see Richmond as a sort of cafe society, but also with some additional retail offers coming in and some more smaller like boutique type places, which we have lost sadly because Richmond did have them, but they were gone. I mean, you'll count on your hands how many we have lost over the last 10 years, and it hasn't been just the last 2 years. It's been a very a longer term gradual decline. And of course, a lot of that is driven by online shopping, and these are trends that are international and they're countrywide, and it's very hard to see today exactly where we are going to end up with those trends, because for everybody in the room, I love going in the alleys, I love going into the shops in Richmond, but I also buy things online. It's a question of convenience. It's like we're all behaving in different ways. And so the whole of the business community will adapt. It will have to adapt, really. Going back to what David Massingham said about the outside performances, I'm very much in favour of that, and I just wanted to let you know that one of the 12 projects that the Be Richmond bid wants to progress in the next bid term, and sooner rather than later, would be to look with the council at where we could place a permanent outside performance space, kind of like a stage that people could go on and play music, or have a dance display, or read poems, whatever it is. But that is what we are thinking of for Richmond, and I absolutely agree that it would probably be best somewhere near the riverside, But the other thing that Richmond is missing, that we feel, is a kind of like a beating heart. There's no town centre. And so the other part of the plan with the council is to look at creating a small town square kind of new civic space that can be used.
Where?
Outside the old library, Whitaker Avenue.
The old town hall?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like between the Ivy and the museum, in that area there, that goes down to the river. So it's kind of like a really natural point. Because what I think doesn't happen is that there's no real connection between the riverside and the town centre. And loads of people go down the river at the weekends, walking, biking. Petersham Nurseries is always packed. But it's to bring the people down the river and bring them into Richmond Town Centre. And I didn't know about the Ham and Twickenham pedestrian footbridge idea, but recently at the Chamber of Commerce, when we had a quick chat afterwards, I was talking to one of your colleagues, and I actually said to him, don't you think that there could be another footbridge between the two riversides? And I was thinking of more like maybe Petersham Nurseries kind of location, because I know that part better. But of course, Ham is just a step further. And I think that's a brilliant idea. And we could have the next garden bridge.
It's the last one really worked out. Let's take a question from the middle. So if you don't mind, sorry, thank you so much for your sterling work, by the way. There's a question right in the middle, gentleman there.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Maybe speak up a little louder.
I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah,
Is that all right?
Yeah.
I'm not a public speaker and not as eloquent as the speakers on the podium this evening, but I've got 4 or 5 points that I've heard this evening and I would like to sort of understand and share with you guys. I've been working and living in Richmond for about 35 years. And why? Because it's one of the most beautiful places on this planet, one of the most beautiful places in this country, and one of the most beautiful places in London. And it's suffering at this stage. And we need to, it's good to hear that Richmond Society wants to improve, and we want to help. And really, first time I'm hearing Ann Chapman-Daniel and Richmond bid. It's really good actually, some of the energy you're putting into it, and that the council is supporting. But is the council, or is there something more you would like them to support, or central government would like you would like them to support better, and perhaps you would like to hear that?
Right, lovely. really.
There are several more questions.
I know, but let's take them one at a time, because I often find that we get Gatling guns and we forget where you started. So, first of all, from a perspective of businesses, are you getting all the support that you need from politicians, local and central?
I think that it's a difficult question, because if you ever say you're getting everything you need, then people will always say, no, we need more, we need more. And of course, to do all the kind of projects which we would like to see, and it's not just the bid, it's the council as well. We basically conducted a kind of feasibility study together with an external consulting company, and they've come up with probably about 50 projects, of which the bidders kind of earmarked about 12 for things that we think that we might be able to get some funding for. But it comes down to funding, and so what I'm really keen on, we've got 2 permanent staff at the bid Be Richmond paid for, and external consultants. And what we're saying to them, and I'm saying to them constantly, is like, is there any funding, like grants? I mean, what can we go out and get? Because the rates that we're paying high rates, but they're not staying with Richmond. They're taken up by central government and they're apportioned around the rest of the country. So, but as a bid organisation, we are permitted to apply for funding together, bringing the Richmond businesses together in one community, which individual businesses would not even be allowed to apply for. So this is what we have started to do, to look for different pots, that come out, that are announced by central government all the time, to see what can we get. Can we get some of this money for Richmond? Can we get it for some of our projects? And some of them are cultural funds, some of them are green funds. And we have managed, we've managed to get various
So let me just take that and modify and flick it over here. But are there certain tweaks that can be done so that she and her members can access bigger pots of money?
One of the when I've spoken to sort of local charities who are doing very similar work in terms of fundraising and looking for grants, one of the big disadvantages is that we're not disadvantaged. If you see what I mean, we obviously as a borough and as a neighbourhood have comparatively high level of average income, both Richmond Town Centre, Richmond Borough more widely. But what Anne was just saying there, we do have some valuable heritage assets, we do have some valuable natural assets, and that's the sort of thing we can play on, as it were, and those are the sorts of people that we can reach out to. But I think if we can come up with some more innovative ways of doing business, there'll be opportunities there as well, to be kind of like, this is something new, no one else has tried it, we'd really like to try it here in Richmond.
Like what, though?
And so I think it could well be something around transport. One of the things I'm get quite passionate about recently is rickshaws. Hear me out on this, but it's because there's a big enthusiasm in the council, and not just here in Richmond, across London and more widely, for active travel, for cycling and walking. What I hear a lot from people is that's not something that they can personally access because they don't have the physical capability for whatever reason. I'm obviously very much engaged at the moment in trying to get more done to get Hammersmith Bridge reopened to cycling and walking, but there are a lot of people who can't cycle or walk, and Barnes Community Association are really trying hard to get a rickshaw service going. And I'm really excited by the prospect of a rickshaw, because it's people who can't cycle themselves could pay a small fee to be cycled by somebody else, and that seems to me a brilliant carbon-free way to travel, much better than driving yourself, much better than getting a taxi, and if we can get a safe and reliable and properly licensed and everything else rickshaw service going, I think that could be really cool. I'm just looking for, I've spoken to a chap who has got the rickshaw design, TfL won't license it, the legislation doesn't exist, we're trying to work through all of these. But I just think Richmond could be a really, really great place, not just across Hammersmith Bridge, but that could be our proof of concept for the people who really need that. I really want to see rickshaws right across Richmond.
Just an additional thing, and this is going to sound quite soon one of the greasiest things we're going to hear this evening, but it's not all about, and there have been lots of greasy things, but it's not just about money. It's also about the people who are getting involved with helping to make Richmond as good as it is. And the Richmond Society do an absolutely first-rate job in promoting Richmond and businesses and just living in Richmond. Pam has been, and we're on different parties, but Pam is an absolutely first-rate ward councillor, and the amount of work that she does on behalf of residents within South Richmond is phenomenal. And Peter's in the audience out there, and I've had the pleasure of working with both of them for nearly as long as I've been on the council. And the amount of time that they put in is really something. And our council officers, who also do an enormous amount, which is far too shy to say, but we've got Lorinda Friends, who's from our economic development office, is sitting in the audience. And they are all committed to making Richmond as good as it possibly can be, and working with Anne with the bid, of course, the Be Richmond, sorry, I'll get my wrist slapped for calling it must be on brand. And it's the people as much as the money, in my view.
Lovely. Now you said you had 3 or 4, but can I restrict you to one more, because I want to try and spread it around. Pick your best other one.
I'll try and put 3 to 1.
Okay, go on.
So, pedestrianization. I grew up in the Midlands, in Birmingham, and at one time, and I went to uni in Manchester, and they pedestrianized those high streets. And in those cities, second city in the UK, third city in the UK, they only have 2 or 3 streets actually which make up the central town. But they pedestrianized those high streets. It killed those businesses and those cities' energy. I do think that will be really bad for Richmond. However, there are spaces in Richmond, for example, the site which was mentioned, the old
town hall.
Beautiful location, which should not require pedestrianization of the whole of the high street of Richmond. That could be used very nicely. The terrace, which apparently I've been trying to frequent myself and my family and friends, the terrace keeps on having problem with getting planning permission to have opening in the evening or Sundays or Saturdays for a restaurant. They couldn't put some tables on the terrace. They could only have it inside. That's not,
okay.
I feel. Yeah?
So
And the
there
last point
okay.
then, buses. You know, driving in Richmond, London is very difficult as a car owner and driver. But buses have free reign. I think they're like Formula One drivers now. They go around, and I've been a pedestrian. The bus is next to me. It's outrageous the way they drive. So do not think it is the car drivers who are the culprits here. Sometimes it's the bus drivers who need to be reined in.
Okay, so, right, thank you. So, on buses, if you want to take that first of all, I mean, you're already worried about being clocked by a bus mirror, so we know where you are, but to take it if you like. But also, just this idea of being more innovative on the terrace and around areas where people are struggling to do the things that, I'm going to call you bid, I'm sorry, it's easy, isn't it? Yeah, but, you know, that you would like to see. It seems to be an uphill struggle.
I'm not familiar with the planning restrictions, and the planning restrictions are awful. I mean, it's terrible. And there are so many things which even I will say, well, what on earth are we not allowing that to happen for? And we go, oh, this metropolitan land, for example, or there's it's a weird thing about planning. People say there's no such thing as a precedent in planning until such time as people want to find that it is actually a precedent. Well, if you do it here, then you'll have to do it elsewhere. Pam's the real expert on this one. Buses, I agree with you. There are it's like the majority of cyclists, the majority of pedestrians, the majority of drivers, the majority of bus drivers drive beautifully. And it's like Joyce Grenfell, stately as a galleon, they say. But there are some which will career around, like for those of us of a certain age, Eddie Sheen. I appreciate that he was a motorcyclist rather than a vehicle driver, but you know what I'm getting at. There are bad bus drivers, just as everybody else, and yes, and they do throw the buses around like nobody's business, but the majority of them are very good. But it is that, it's more the feeling that even at about 10 miles an hour, and you feel the glamour of the wing mirror coming quite, whoa! And it's more like
Well, yes, on planning, I mean, it's quite true. And you know, it's all very well to say that metropolitan open land, but there'll be other areas where people will really fight. And the Richmond Society itself, I know, will be fighting to preserve metropolitan open land. But there's also sort of common sense, because I remember what's now I think Brindisi, but it was Jackson and Rye, and they wanted to put some tables and chairs on just immediately outside, and it just turned out that that's metropolitan open land. And in fact, I did take it to planning, and we got eventually permission. I don't know if you want permission that now, but we did get permission from them to put tables and chairs there, because frankly, it made sense. I mean, who on earth was going to be sitting right in front of that restaurant? So it made sense for them to have it. So there is an element of common sense, but we do actually want to preserve metropolitan open land. I think for things like Whitaker Avenue, it would make a lot of sense. Very little parking would be lost there. It would make good sense to have something like, you know, some public open space there for events. And I think also, if we're looking just a little bit further about some of the sort of blue sky thinking for Richmond, and what you can do also with accessing some of the grants, not just government, but there's also the mayor and the GLA fund as well that can benefit. The things that can happen that can really attract people into Richmond, it could be something new. And we should be looking again at the pop-up shop idea. Because there are an awful lot of businesses selling online, would perhaps like that face-to-face experience, might even end up by taking a shop. You don't know. That's the sort of thing, but it also, because you can have, say, the pop-up shops will taking in, we did it once before, maybe they will take the space for six months or 2 months, but what you can get over that period of time is new and different things that attract people actually to go into that area of Richmond or the shops. So I think, you know, working with the bid, we should be looking at that, you know, empty shops, taking a lease. Those businesses can rent it for that time, but it's bringing a new experience and possibly more people who will then decide that they might take a shop themselves in the end. So we should look at things like that.
So I'm aware of the time ticking away. I'm going to address the elephant in the room, or the size of it, the bloody great mammoth in the room. What is happening to House of Fraser? Please, we're dying to know, because it's such an enormous footprint in the middle of Richmond. Anne, would you take that for us?
So I'll try and take that, but everybody chip in, because we all know, you know, parts of the story. But you know, the lucky thing for Richmond is that the House of Fraser store is owned. The property is owned by a local family, so they are very, very much in favour of redeveloping the site for the best interests of Richmond. And the plan is, it's taking a lot longer. It was already going to happen before COVID, so we already knew that it was going to shut for at least 2 years. And because COVID came along, it's probably going to take even longer than that initial 2-year period. But they've been doing a lot of stripping out inside because there was asbestos, so that's taken quite a while. And now I can see that there are people going in there, you know, constantly, workmen in there, and they are making progress inside. The plan is really to have retail in the basement on the ground floor, and, you know, sort of maybe one big retailer if somebody came along and took the whole lot. They are hoping for like high quality retail. It might be various different retailers who go in there. If, you know, until the leases are available and people are bidding for leases, then we won't know. We wouldn't know at this stage anyway. And then the top 3 floors are earmarked for offices, and possibly with a cafe area in the top, and most probably also with some kind of temporary, you know, working space, like
hot desk
space, yeah, for multiple companies to go in there, or for individuals to go in and work, which will also be great and ties in with the kind of more working from home mentality that I think is here to stay.
Thank you for that part. Who wants to take the next part of the puzzle?
Oh, frankly, I'm not sure there's much more to say. I mean, what I do think they have done is try
Timelines. Maybe you could fill in on timelines, because it sounds great, but just do we have any idea about when?
Well, originally, it
would have been, I think, sort of next year. But, you know, it's obviously, I think Anne alluded to this anyway, because of the pandemic, I think it's likely to be likely to take longer than that. So, I mean, you know, we're probably looking at 2023 before it reopens. But at least we've got something there at the moment that is advertising the small businesses behind it, so that everybody knows that they are still opening and functioning. And I think it really is important that we have that office space, because that office space is going to bring employees and spending into Richmond. And I hope it's going to be, you know, really energy efficient, because that's going to be key. Because businesses that want to now come and now invest in Richmond are going to be looking at their carbon footprint. So that's going to be very important.
Thank you very much. So this is your opportunity. This is a very sort of high power panel we have here, who can make your dreams come true. All of them. I mean, well, they at least can hear you out. So, I mean, if there are things that you really want to see in your area, I mean, I think these are the times you may not have a question, but you may have a wish list of things that you'd like to see. So just put your hand in the air. Don't be shy. Gentleman over there. Thank you very much. In the middle.
We matter on air quality and carbon emissions. As a good green traveller on the railway, when I come out of station, one of the things that really gets up my nose in more ways than one is taxis. Puffing away, no customers, but the engine running. Can we do anything about it? Can we put any pressure on these people?
Yeah, yes, we can. I used to have offices. You know where the KFC's going in? I used to have the offices directly above when I worked in last year, I worked in my research to an extent, but I used to operate out of that. And I would come down on a regular basis and woefully abuse my privileges as a councillor by whipping out my councillor ID card and saying, would you mind switching your engine off? And say, I'm a member of the council here, thank you. And we need that. What we have is all of our sorry to mention these parking ordinances, I know they're big favourites to everybody, but they are empowered to do sweeps through areas and approach people on idling and ask them to switch the engines off, and if they refuse to switch the engines off, then they can issue them with a fixed penalty notice, ticket to everybody else, but they can issue them with a fine. And what if we are still seeing, as you say, that we've got regular idling of taxis outside the station, then tomorrow I'll have a word with my parking people and say, can we have a bit more of a sweep outside the station? Because that's one of the things, I mentioned earlier that we've got some of the worst air quality levels within the entire borough, and it's bang outside the station, and a lot of it is to do with idling taxis.
Thank you very much. Very good question. Anyone else? There's a gentleman there, and then there's a lady at the front. Why don't you go to the lady at the front? Give your legs a rest. Thank you.
Louise Fluker from the Richmond Society. And I also am chair of the planning committee, so what you've been saying is quite pertinent. Because I think one of the challenges for Richmond is to preserve and celebrate our heritage, but not preserve it in aspect. Which sounds fine in principle, but actually getting the actual balance right is very hard. Just a quick observation, Richmond has always had a tradition of people coming in to celebrate carouse and so forth, because my grandfather and my father in the 30s were doing it. So it's an honourable tradition. But the question nobody's spoken about at all is housing. We talk about wanting people to come and work in Richmond, and we want, therefore, presumably youngsters who will come and live in Richmond. But the difficulty is that Richmond is an incredibly expensive area in which to live. And one of the things I've noticed, particularly in George Street, is the number of applications to convert floors above retail shops to residential properties. And the challenge there, I think, is that you get good quality things, so you don't end up with the slums of the future. But my understanding is from the property people is that actually one of the the things that they think could sell in Richmond would be developments for studio flats, one-bedroom flats, for young people, but they are expected to be of high quality. So observations.
Well, you know, and then excellent. And I'm going to circle back to you because you are planning as well. So then we've got the whole closed circuit here. Sarah, first of all, just affordable housing for people who are going to bring energy and also work in these places that are going to rely on the economy.
It is a huge challenge, and actually I think Richmond is one of the places finding it quite hard to square that circle. There was a big report on housing out the week before last, and the thing that really stuck out to me is that Richmond and Kingston together at the bottom of the London sort of list, as it were, for new housing. We have, between the two boroughs, we've built the least housing out of all London boroughs up to the City of London in the last 10 years. And I asked a couple of questions about that. One of the big challenges in both boroughs is a lack of large sites to develop. The two that we do have, the old home-based site, which you probably know, on Manor Grove, and the other one is the big brewery site over in Mortlake. And both of those, so there was a development that went forward for planning approval on the home-based site, has been turned down by the council, been called in by the mayor, and we're still waiting for the mayor. The brewery...
Turned down on what grounds?
I would have to... Well, I think... Well, I'll defer to Gareth.
Which one are we talking about?
Home-based.
Oh, it was very high.
Yeah.
Overdeveloped.
Yeah, overdeveloped comparison.
Yeah.
And no parking.
Sorry, yeah.
Well, it was sort of overdevelopment, out of character with the conservation area, and lack of affordable housing. It then, of course, went to the mayor, but the developers then increased the size of the development, and the heights as well. And I think it goes up to, is it 11? Is it 11 now? Yes, because it was 9, 10, so it's gone up to 11 stories. And it's absolutely sort of dwarfing the little Victorian cottages. And, you know, so that is now, it has been approved by the mayor, but it hasn't actually, well, it hasn't finally been approved by the mayor because Section 106 hasn't been signed. But there's a lot of opposition to that because of the size of the development and where it is, and you know that it's going to cause extra traffic congestion. Although it's a car-free development, it's going to have deliveries. So you know there's huge controversy about that. And the Stag Brewery site, well, the mayor actually refused that, so we are waiting for.
Can I flick it back to you? Because where would you put these developments?
On home base, our view as trustees of the Richmond Society was that it was an overdevelopment. I mean, in other words, that it was too high, and there were issues over transport access because the plan envisaged very little car parking, so local residents were concerned that people would have cars, but they would park them in the surrounding areas. And then they'd all travel from North Sheen Station, and at the same time, South West Railways is proposing to reduce the service. So in other words, it doesn't stack up with the number of people, and also reduce buses. So there were, I think, a number of issues there, although fundamentally, I think we thought that the developers had taken some trouble to look at the surrounding architecture and so forth, but our difficulty was the scale. And this, I think, is one of the issues. Probably Richmond has difficulty because so much of our space is open land and protected, it's green space, so there aren't the number of sites where you can build.
Yeah.
And when you get big sites that come up, then of course the developers are going to want to maximise their opportunity.
Yeah.
And also I think there's pressure from Mayor Khan, because I think certainly the developers for home base were pretty much told that they had to increase the amount of affordable housing, and in order to do that, they therefore increased the amount of building. So I don't think there's an easy answer. I mean, interest, I think, was principally within the town centre in terms of what...
Sorry, I was coming to that because I was just sort of mentioning it's the lack of large sites has meant the lack of building, and that does mean that we're always looking for opportunities just to do bits here and there. And as I say, the lack of large sites means that there isn't the opportunity to really kind of imagine something fantastic and make it happen. You're always having to build in between or alongside or on top of something that's already there. And that does create quite severe limitations.
There was a question at the back, and I've lost sight of you. There we are, gentlemen in the back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's Councillor Peter Buckler. Gareth, I know you're itching for one of these questions, so I'm going to drop it onto you so that you can enjoy yourself. It's about public lavatories. Some progress has been made. I think we're all very happy with the development along the two gardens there, where the cafe is being turned into. It used to be a single public lavatory. Now it is a cafe which looks after a couple of lavatories there, which are open to the public. And the door into the disabled lavatory in the Old Town Hall is open for most of the day, although that shuts at about 5 o'clock. The lavatory scheme, whereby shops open their facilities to shoppers, etc., worked for a bit between about 2009 and 2016, but it doesn't work so much now, and a lot have dropped out of it. So we're short of those facilities in the centre of Richmond. I would like to see an underground, high-quality public lavatory in the centre of Richmond, supervised all the time, pay to use. Because I do think that it's reasonable to ask people to pay a small amount of money to use a public lavatory. Kept very clean, safe, of course. You have someone supervising it so that families with children can happily let their child go off and on his own down and do his business and come out. As it used to be when I was a kid, nowadays you wouldn't dream of it in case they let some funny person know. I would like to see that. It'll cost money. What we could do is use the old lavatories beneath the town hall, which are Victorian and need ripping out, of course, and have been closed for a number of years. Build out a basement underneath the town hall, as our residents are very keen to do with some of their houses around the area. So we're all very good at building basements, and we could put a super loo in there, which would service the town centre during the day and the nighttime economy.
Okay,
Please quote.
Thank you. Gareth, over to you.
Digging out a basement underneath the old town hall, you'll have the Heritage Brigade on you. The one problem about putting toilets underground is that they do not cater for the accessibility needs, whether it's people in wheelchairs, people that have got difficulty moving, the older resident perhaps that doesn't want to teeter down the stairs. I mean, I like the idea of, those of us who remember Carry On Screaming, the modern day equivalent of Dan the lavatory man, standing there making sure that everybody, hands over their penny. But I think that there is a need, to be honest, for some form of permanent and out-of-hours service. There are toilets. I mean, the one which always gets overlooked at the moment, and now is free for those people who wish to know, is at Richmond Railway Station. And so what we need to do is, first and foremost, signpost. This is the thing which I keep going on as officers about, is that it's going to take time and it's going to take a lot of money to put in something permanent. But it's going to be very quick and very cheap to put in a few heritage finger posts saying lavatories this way or lavatories that way. Something nice and tasteful and quite original. But letting people know where the current cars are. And also having another look at the community toilet scheme, because I think it's something which is, with the modern day, with your apps and what have you, something which is going to signpost people towards it. The money that is given isn't too bad. I think it's about £200 a year for just to allow people to use the toilets of any cafe or pub or something. We need to get some more officer resource to try to zhuzh it along, to try to recruit more members, and if necessary, to slightly bit more cash in order to get people to take part. But there is a need for more public toilet provision in Richmond. Whether it's going to be underground, I honestly don't know. We do have to consider all users, not just the people who can get up and down the stairs like Nancy goes on a regular basis.
Just round for Councillor Fraser.
Well, this is a possibility, and I'm sure Pam's about to come in.
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, I think it will be interesting to see what one can negotiate with Councillor Fraser. But the trouble is, it probably isn't going to be, the length of time. It won't be open necessarily in the evenings. And I think that what we're talking about is something that's going to be there, particularly in the summer when we've got families walking along the riverside, the green, visiting Richmond. So I think you need it. I just want to go back to the community toilet scheme because I think it's fine to complement a proper paid toilet that is signposted, because that's the trouble with the community toilet scheme. Businesses either come out of the scheme or they're closed down, and so nobody quite knows where there is a toilet. So you need to have that toilet, that paid toilet, and it does need to be open in the evenings, particularly in the summer. So that's why, yes, great to have Councillor Fraser, and bringing back in Marks and Spencer. I never knew why Marks and Spencer was rejected because it wasn't independent, because they were in the scheme, and it's great. But I think we do need, it's something that Richmond needs for its visitor economy. Very important.
Where are there signposts? I mean, this is maybe okay.
Well, there used to be something in Hampton in my
But you
parish.
can signpost to the station toilet. You know what? I use that station all the time.
Yeah.
It's a revelation to me that the toilet is now I didn't know. That would have been nice to know on many an occasion. Okay. Any more questions from the audience? One. The gentleman, you had one before, but we'll come back. It's fine. Yeah, you're allowed. We're quite close to Christmas.
We'll pass it back, yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's good that, evening economy. Gareth, you joked about wheelchairs, but the evening economy mostly will be younger people, etc., and there should be greater provision definitely for those around central Richmond. The one on the Richmond Green, above ground level, I don't think that's reasonable. Below ground level, very reasonable. So greater permission should be given to development underground, I think. Suggestion. And second point then, the big site development, redevelopment site of what's it called again, the shop? Right. Underground car parking. Greater emphasis should be allowed for underground. Businesses need deliveries. We live on the Richmond Green. We get blocked. The whole of the high street is blocked. Towards the bridge is blocked, towards what used to be the police station is blocked because lorries are trying to deliver. They should go underground parking, and the developers should be encouraged to build underground car parking for delivery and or car parking too, if need be.
Okay.
Suggestion
Thank you.
from my
I would just make the comment that the trouble that we've got in Richmond is that we've got the river, and so you've got the water table to think about
Indeed.
as well. So that does make a bit of a problem for going underground. With the lorries and the deliveries, I mean that's something that I've often thought. You go to other countries, and I lived in Germany for a few years, and deliveries are basically during the night and before 6 in the morning, and that's it. And they do not go in after like 6 in the morning. That's it. They're out, and it's the day of work begins. And I do think that in the UK we are, we maybe don't tackle all of the problems. And I know it's difficult because we've got lots of small companies and small businesses, and then you have to have someone there to take the delivery, and there's, you change one thing and then there's a whole chain reaction. But things could be done differently, and that would ease the congestion during the day.
But residents do complain about nighttime deliveries because of the noise, and we've had huge complaints about that from people getting their insurance. So that's the problem when you've got a mixed residential and business area.
Yes.
I get where you're coming from. First and foremost, it'd be eye-wateringly expensive to excavate out underneath, and particularly when it's private business, the first question you have to ask is what's the return on it? And in order to get anywhere near the return in a relatively short amount of time on underground car parking underneath House of Fraser, you'd have to have such, again, eye-wateringly high car parking charges to pay for it. So that's the first point. However, the broader point, and I think the more salient point, if I may, is that we need to be encouraging people to come to our town centres, not just Richmond, but all of our town centres, and whether it's in Richmond Borough or beyond, in ways other than by car. Because we tried car-dominated town centres for years and years and years, and they don't work. And just encouraging more cars into town centres is not the way forward. But encouraging, I'll get the letter to say encouraging cars at all, but maybe suggesting people come to their towns and either park and ride or park and stride is a better way forward than encouraging people to come right into the towns in their cars. Because a load of people that will be coming to do shopping in Richmond will be coming to buy a greetings card or a watch. And you don't need to come in the car to buy a watch. You don't need to come in the car to buy a greetings card. One of the companies which I had a bit of a head-to-head with regarding pedestrianising another area was a carpet shop. And my question to them was, when has somebody ever come to your shop to buy a carpet and they've taken it away on their roof bars? Never. Driving to shops is not the way forward.
Thank you. Yes.
So just a bit of information on Lewes, as a local architect. We've got a wonderful derelict toilet on the terrace on the right, just above Hollyhock. That's a 3-storey Edwardian derelict loo with level access on 3 levels.
Wait. So above the Hollyhock, in terms
Hollyhock
of...
Cafe,
Yeah.
I'm sure most of us in Richmond know that there was a derelict toilet just off Richmond Hill.
Yeah.
In Terrace Gardens. It's very large. I'll take you up there, sir. The other one is
all the best offers I get.
in the nicest possible way. The other one is the one that we all fought for getting, which is underneath Waitrose, which was closed. And that was a very sad. There are 2 very large derelict toilets.
This is amazing to me.
That's fine.
And toilets of Richmond. We should know more about this. So why can those not be revived if there are toilets there?
It's now cost a coffee as far as I know, the
No, Pamela, you know where I'm talking, Hillrise, okay? Sorry. The one underneath Waitrose was closed down for antisocial behaviour, but it could be rejuvenated. It is there, it's plumbed in, and it was part of the development. The one up on the terrace is really a sad relic which could be brought into use, and I highly recommend it was. And you could use the rooftop of that for a cafe, to be honest with you. I think most of us know the structure, the state knows it. As for the Royal Borough.
Oh, hello.
The Royal Borough. So the answer is, I'm told by a historian, that between the 17th and 19th century, Richmond was a place for royal mistresses and not for royal patronage. And that's the case. That's the reason why we won't get the royal insignia, because most of Richmond was used for 200 years for mistresses.
They vary much, don't they?
It's midpoint between Hampton Court and Westminster, by boat.
Scandal and toilets, all of that. Thank you very much.
Perhaps we'll be all right.
Any other questions at all? I think we are getting the wind up time. Can't we do? Have we got time for one more question? Because there was a gentleman there. You can be straight to Barry next. It's your party. We're just delighted. One more. What? You are. We'll get. No. Okay. You're a humanitarian. If it's a very short one, there you go. Okay.
On the question of nighttime toilets, I mean, we've got millions of pubs in the middle of Richmond. What on earth is the problem?
I've been thrown out of most of them.
just popping in for a pee, is it? Oh dear. I mean,
yeah.
surely they could be close to accept people.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. It's an odd note to end on, I won't lie. It's a valuable note to end on. Listen, thank you very much to Anne and to Pamela and to Sarah and Gareth, and my brain has slightly been overwhelmed by these secret toilets of Richmond, which I'm now going to go plot on a map. Thank you very much indeed for your questions, and have a very lovely evening, Barry.
Thank you, Anita. There is one toilet you haven't mentioned. It's the one in Old Deer Park.
Old Deer Park.
Do you know?
No, I know.
You know them all. Of course you do. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this very interesting tonight. I have. My description, or my impression I may have given, the picture I painted of Richmond somewhat negatively, evidently was wrong, because as we heard this evening, Richmond has got a very good, positive story to tell and huge potential. Thank you for drawing that out, Anita, and thank you for our guests, Anne, Pamela, Sarah, Gareth. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Just one more thing I'll tell you about before we go, and that is our next meeting, which is in a month's time, and it's our annual general meeting and Christmas party right here, Thursday the 9th of December. I hope that you will come and join us then. Thank you so much.